So when we get a new referral, we try and gather as much information from nurseries and other professionals that know the child and parents. Obviously, we've got a lot of background reports already, so we prepare ourselves to meet the child, and then we would send an invitation to come to a clinic appointment. And my part of the assessment would be to do a play-based assessment with the child. That's something called an ADOS, which stands for Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, which is a really long name, but it basically means that I'll be playing with the child and looking at how they communicate and interact with me. And we usually video that assessment just so that we've got a really clear picture of the child. I don't need to stop the play, I can keep interacting with the child, but when I come to write my report, I've got a clear picture of what happened. So that's what I'm doing sort of as part of the assessment. That usually takes half an hour to 45 minutes.
And if we're not sure about anything, if we're not sure about the way the child was using, say, gestures and non-verbal communication, we can go back over the video and look at it and pick up little small details later. My role in the assessment is sometimes to watch part of the child playing and the observations, but my main role as a doctor is to gather as much information as I can from the parents, guardians, family, whoever is accompanying the child. And that is a fairly lengthy interview, which usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half, going right through each stage of the child's development, from pregnancy, right through birth, family history, the early parts of the child's development, and then what that particular child is able to do now, their strengths, and often the children we see are really capable in some areas, and then the areas where they're having difficulties. And then we take the interview, we take the observations of the child playing, any information from nursery or school or other settings the child attends, and we pull all of that information together. And most of the time that all matches up really well, and when it fits together nicely, we're able to make a diagnosis. Sometimes that diagnosis is autism. Sometimes we see children who've been referred and people have asked about autism, but we find that maybe it's just an isolated problem with their language, so it's something like a developmental language disorder, or we find that the difficulties are quite widespread across the whole of development, so not just in the specific areas that we see in autism, but if it's affecting the whole of development, we sometimes see children who have globally disordered development as well. So just because a child's been referred for an autism assessment doesn't necessarily mean they get an autism diagnosis. And if the answer is that it's not autism, we sometimes make a different diagnosis. Sometimes, especially with the very young children that we see, we find that between the time they've been referred and coming to us, there's been a big change, or things are not as clear as we thought they were. And if that's the case, it's such an important diagnosis to make. We will often wait and review them.
Yeah, and the reason really why we want to make a diagnosis in the first place is to make sure that we're giving the right kind of support for a child. So it is really important to make sure we get it right. And we do try to do that in one sort of joint appointment if we can. It's quite a long appointment for a family and for the child. They can be in the clinic for an hour and a half. So it is a long appointment, but we want to get it right because it is a big diagnosis, as you say, Helen, and the reason we're doing it is so that we can really signpost the kind of support that a child and a family are going to need in the future.
So yeah, in Newcastle we do try and do it in one go. So Marie would be in one room doing the observations. I'll be in a separate room but with a window and a one-way mirror through to the room where the child's playing so the parents can watch what's going on. And then once the play-based assessment and the interview are over, I will examine the child as well to look for any associated difficulties that we sometimes see, make sure we're not missing another diagnosis, such as a genetic diagnosis or something like cerebral palsy, which occasionally can happen. And all of that feeds into our evaluation. We don't just have a chat and decide.
Mm-hmm.
There are very strict diagnostic criteria that everybody across the world who does autism assessments adheres to. Some you may have heard of either ICD-11, which is International Classification of Diseases 11. Sometimes people see ICD criteria on reports, and sometimes people put DSM, which is Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And those two sets of criteria are very similar, but they're clearly defined. It's not just how we feel on the day. It's clear guidance about levels of difficulty in communication and with social interaction. So we follow an internationally defined set criteria when we are evaluating all the information that we've gathered.
And sometimes we can do that in one clinic appointment because we've done our preparation and got reports from other people, and it is a clear picture. Sometimes it's not, and we don't want to rush it. We will take more time, and we might see a family again in 6 months, and we might put some advice and some support in or recommendations, and then see them again in 6 months or a year's time, because we want to make sure we're getting it right, and it's important to sort of take that time if it's not clear.
Yeah, and that's definitely the best thing to do. And we usually find when that happens, children either improve considerably and we realise there's been some other difficulty happening all along, or we find that with time the problem actually becomes more obvious and clear-cut as development and the expectations of what the child should be doing and their learning become more, the difficulties, if they're having any, and the differences become more obvious with time. So it's a small percentage usually we end up watching and waiting, and the majority of children, I would say probably about 8 or 9 out of 10 will make a diagnosis on the day, but occasionally there is a good reason for watching and waiting. We don't want to get it wrong, like you say. And if we do make a diagnosis, we give an explanation of what that means on the day, and we'll move on to that explanation in one of our other videos.